While a lot of attention is being paid to the Tampa Bay Rays and their whole stadium fiasco around Tropicana Field and the now canceled gas plant project, a situation contrived by greedy ownership and dunderheaded local politicians who couldn't govern themselves out of a sack, a potentially sadder stadium situation is unfolding about a mile down the road from Tropicana Field involving another team out of town Stew Sternberg owns. Al Lang Stadium, the humble home of the Tampa Bay Rowdies for more than a decade, could potentially be torn down in favor of an amphitheater for the Florida Orchestra, and an entirely too large ticket stand for a venue that would seemingly be open to the public, but also probably not really open to the public. If you've ever watched this channel before, you know I'm a sports guy, but you also know I'm a bit of an arts and culture guy. I believe the world has more than enough room for both to peacefully coexist. In fact, I'd argue that each side would be better off mingling a little more with the other. Well, after seeing that picture, maybe not. And you know, the fact I have something in common with Hall of Fame loser Jeffrey Loria, that's unsettling. Let's just move past this. Back in Florida, by now, you're probably well aware of what's happening with the Rays, Tropicana Field, the canceled ballpark, all of that jazz. It's a crappy situation that could see the franchise potentially relocate to Orlando or elsewhere. And the way the entire situation has played out has just been so crappy for fans. Really, it's just a situation that has played out in the most utterly stupid fashion. Stupid people on all sides of the equation doing self-serving things to screw over the average person. God bless the USA, am I right? Speaking of God, Proverbs 13:16. Every prudent man worketh with knowledge, but a fool flaunteth his folly. Look, like all things involving the Bible, there are 1,000,001 different translations of that verse, but the gist is always the same. Now, you might be wondering, how does this relate to St. Pete and the Tampa Bay Rowdies stadium issues? Good question. We all know that people in Florida love thumping their Bibles, but maybe they should actually try opening it up every once in a while. So in St. Pete, what this means is, after nothing but folly surrounding the Rays over the past months, those down in this region are flaunting their follies and repeating past mistakes by trying to tear down Al Lang Stadium, leaving the Rowdies, and by proxy, their owners, the Rays, with no place to play. The ultimate case of nose cutting.
Remember Spider-Face?
No.
Okay, because the quote was, "Cut off your nose to Spider-Face."
Unless, of course, Sternberg and the Rays are pushing someone in Tampa to demolish the stadium because it would give them a very convenient excuse to move both their MLB and USL franchises. What we do know about the plan to demolish Al Lang Stadium is that it's being promoted, pushed even, by St. Pete Mayor Ken Welch, who seems to be working toward one of two different agendas here. Either he wants to stick it to Rays owners for their refusal to go ahead with the gas plant stadium project, or the Rays are lobbying behind the scenes to get Al Lang Stadium raised so they can move the Rowdies with minimal fuss. Given the cesspool that is St. Pete and Florida politics as a whole, as well as the Rays' willingness to donate to local politicians, you could see either scenario being true. Regardless, there are stupid plans, and there are stupid plans, and this very much falls in the camp of the latter. To understand why, well, why don't we just take a look at the situation now unfolding in St. Pete. Al Lang Stadium is situated on a stretch of waterfront land in the city near a theater and the Salvador Dalí Museum, which is actually located on the site of the old Bayfront Center, a venue that hosted the indoor soccer version of the Rowdies, along with a bunch of other random events over the years. Perhaps some folks at the theater with their champagne flutes and ivory towers aren't huge fans of the stadiums and lowbrow sports that come along with it. And with the seemingly unlikely to be realized Rays Stadium in the gas plant district, also including the development of a convention center in town, some thought, why don't we lump that convention center in with this project over here by the theater and museum? Someone funded a report for plans and conceptual designs on how this area of St. Pete could be revitalized. By the way, a great time to be involved in the render making business. The preliminary economic impact report found that the Al Lang Stadium site is underutilized and could play a significant role in shaping the city's public waterfront in the future. All it would cost is a tick under $300 million, which of course in American construction terms is actually more than $500 million when everything is all said and done. Oh yeah, the Tampa Bay Rowdies, one of the USL's best supported franchise, a team whose history in this part of Florida dates back 50 years now, would be left with no place to play, meaning the most likely outcome would be them relocating. The proposal itself was actually broken into two phases. The first includes the convention center, a expansion for the Dalí Museum, and various improvements away from Al Lang Stadium. The second involved Al Lang Stadium being torn down and replaced with a 3,000-seat amphitheater. But really, judging by the renderings, it seems to be nothing more than a stage with a giant awning as well as some parking, retail shops, and what has been dubbed a public park, but really just looks like some grassy areas. There are a few different things to unpack here, but let's start with Al Lang Stadium itself, a venue whose history now dates back more than 100 years on this site. It began life as a baseball stadium, underwent a major reconstruction in 1947, has hosted minor league baseball, spring training, ACC tournaments, among other hardball events. Baseball eventually dried up with the arrival of a major league team, and the facility was converted into a soccer-specific venue that allowed St. Pete to host the Rowdies. And honestly, Al Lang Stadium for soccer is one of my favorite USL venues. Yes, it is extremely flawed, but imperfection is beauty in its own right. For crying out loud, this thing is located next to the Salvador Dalí Museum. It might as well be a surrealist interpretation of a soccer stadium. Now, at one time, there were plans to renovate this into a more modern facility as part of an MLS push, but those fell by the wayside. The Rowdies were then eventually purchased by Tampa Bay Rays ownership. Incredulously, no one working on the Al Lang Stadium demolition plan bothered to consult with the team on what their future may hold. In fact, it wasn't even an afterthought. It's non-existent. Now, the USL franchise is working with a lease extension for the city to continue using Al Lang Stadium. This oversight seems fairly intentional. Thankfully, the St. Pete City Council seemed fairly unimpressed with plans that would see the stadium bulldozed for what essentially amounts to a roof and a stage. A few members questioned if an amphitheater was truly needed. Another city council member suggested retrofitting Al Lang so it could host amphitheater-style events. Also, the Florida Orchestra already performs outdoors in St. Pete. They've hosted Pops in a Park, including one at Vinoy Park last year. A short walk away, catty corner from Al Lang Stadium, is D-Men's Landing Park, where American Stage erects a massive temporary venue with room for musical accompaniment for its annual American Stage in the Park event. If you tear down Al Lang Stadium, the Rowdies have no place to play and the city loses its USL franchise. Meanwhile, there are many other parks in the St. Pete area capable of hosting concerts and theater events. What exactly would this amphitheater be doing? What need does it fill? By the way, no one bothered running these plans by IndyCar and the organizers of the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, which uses the space for the course, the paddock, and a few other things. Nothing like potentially killing two sporting birds with one stone. So designers unilaterally made plans on what the site could potentially do to accommodate the race, but they never bothered running anything past IndyCar. Off topic, IndyCar has two great races to open its season, St. Pete and Long Beach. Why the hell is Thermal the middle of this open wheel racing sandwich? It looks like the go-kart track found at a local mini golf course in the suburbs of just about every American city. And somehow the racing is less exciting than what you would find at said go-kart track. That aside, alienating a sporting event that St. Pete acknowledges is a nice little earner for the city in order to push through plans only a handful of folks seemingly want seems like a terrible idea. Now, it would be nice to know who is pushing St. Pete Mayor Ken Welch over this proposal to demolish Al Lang Stadium. We know the Tampa Bay Rays are involved somehow. It would just be nice to know if they are the screwy or the screwer here. Not that their involvement matters at all. The Tampa Bay Rowdies and Al Lang Stadium belong to the supporters. Ralph's Mob has helped make Al Lang Stadium into one of the best soccer venues in all the USL. Honestly, I would say in all of US soccer, and Ralph's Mob has a very underrated TIFO game. There is also the sporting history of this site, which dates back all the way to 1923 and the St. Petersburg Athletic Park. There's value in that. Yes, It's about ensuring the Rowdies have a place to play, but it's also about protecting something that has meant something to the community for decades. I highly doubt the plan to demolish Al Lang Stadium gains any traction because it's utterly stupid. Let's not mince words here. Let's not sit on a fence. We can call a spade a spade. This is a ridiculously poor plan that makes zero sense. Yet in modern times, sometimes dumb plans and ideas like that won't die. Every once in a while, a few actually gain traction despite being opposed by the majority. With the Rays somehow involved, you can't discredit anything. Well, there is one thing you can count on, and that's Ralph's Mob turning up to support their Tampa Bay Rowdies. Al Lang Stadium is not perfect, but it may be a soccer venue that Salvador Dalí would approve of. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to know more about the soccer season that never ends, check out the video in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. And for what's happening with Sac Republic's new ownership, that would be the video in the lower left-hand corner. Until next time, I'm Shine Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out, the 25.